My dad always told me that you only get one name, so invest in it accordingly. And I always thought about that. I thought it was a really good line. Just like you only get one name. Like you can change your companies, you can go bankrupt, but like your name stays with you.
Yeah.
And so that can either be an asset or it can be a liability.
Yeah.
And why not have it be a huge brand, have brand power in and of itself?
Something I've reflected on really recently in this year is I think I have a need, I chase a lot, and so I lack a lot of fulfillment in some of my work, which is actually a successful thing. So like it leads me to keep doing new things, it leads me to create new things, but sometimes I'm so busy on to the next thing, I have no appreciation or value or fulfillment of what I've been able to do. And I think I've noticed that my mom, which is kind of wild. Like she's like, all right, we're doing this thing next. I gotta clean this. I'm like, do you wanna just sit with us and hang out? And I think that's led me to do these different things in business.
Like I am still more trusting. I am still more like, you know what, he was having a bad day. Or like, you know what, like maybe, like I still will try, because I think I empathize a lot with people who are in difficult situations because I have been in them and I understand the difficulty.
Right.
Layla just doesn't give a fuck. Layla just sees through people. It's crazy. Like, I mean, even when we like check in with our portfolio companies, like this just happened. We had a portfolio company recently. We hopped on. We check in regularly and whatnot, obviously. And the CEO is on. We're like, anything to report? What's new? You know, he gives normal stuff. And we got off the call and she was like, he's not telling us something. I was like, what? Like, you know, like, I mean, it seemed fine to me, right? And then lo and behold, we find out that there was a big problem that they hadn't told us about. And it's just like, she just like doesn't miss.
Yeah.
And so I do lean on her a lot with that stuff. So our single rule of marriage that's helped tremendously has just been, if we both don't agree, we don't do it.
I think we all have different types of personalities, and part of it is it shouldn't be, I think one thing is just not being ashamed of our personality and just accepting and embracing. I think that's one thing I've been working on. It's like, this is who you are. I think I've also just been noticing there's areas where with biking, let me just look around a little bit more and let me just try to appreciate the nature or the weather or just the sun or the uncomfortableness, discomfort that I'm feeling in it. And that's proved to be a little bit more richer of a life. And I think when people are searching for enlightenment or fulfillment, it's kind of like it's all there right now in this moment. But I think I'm so looking for that next hit that I just don't get it at all. So I've really taken a step back in almost everything I'm doing to be more observant about like, don't worry about the destination. You're gonna die. That's definitely for sure. So let's enjoy some of these journeys on that path.
If Layla somehow were hit by a bus tomorrow and I were taking over all of our affairs, I know that I would correct towards the middle. I'd be like, I want to do this. She probably, like, I have a pretty good gut feel for what she would say yes to, but I'll still push it just in case. And sometimes I'm surprised. I'm like, oh, you do think this is good?
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, let's do it. Sometimes I just throw them out there as softballs for like her to swat down, so that when I really want one, you know what I mean? I'm like, you did say no to all these other ones. I was like, so I feel like it's time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love that. I almost see like a little dialogue bubble. Like, what would Layla do? You know, it's like that runs through your calculation.
Her picker's unbelievable. But like, I think we have a very like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, obviously, you know, we're married, but like Charlie always says no. Warren wants to pursue. It's just like, I think it's very natural to have somebody who's going to try and pursue opportunities and somebody else who's like, is it core? Does it align with where we're trying to go?
Yeah.
Et cetera.
No, I love that story of, you know, you basically got married for business first
100%.
and then figured out how to navigate the rest. That's super cool.
Yep. We were living together 5 weeks after we met. In motels.
The things we fear the most sometimes aren't that scary. And and the same thing in business, where the phrase that I didn't like is that for the past 3 years of my company and what I've been doing professionally, I feel like I've just been calling it in. Like, oh, and it's funny, it's all about calls, but it is, I was calling it in. Like, am I really showing up? Am I really present? Am I really fully engaged in the work I'm doing? And I would say no. And then when COVID hit in March, I had a few people tell me like, hey, you know, some of the things you've done like really helped me. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. I didn't believe it.
Right.
And then a few more people told me, they're like, hey, you know, you did this video, or you had monthly1k.com, your course, or something I bought on AppSumo, or some of your content you've put out. And honestly, I just was in disbelief. And at that moment, I started thinking, well, maybe I can't help these people.
Disbelief, why though?
It's funny, I was listening to my own episode. I think people don't like hearing their own voices. I love hearing my own stuff lately. And I think that's the way you improve, by being an editor of yourself. And so I was listening to an episode, and I think it sounds fucking crazy. I thought I was a dumbass, and I thought all these people then for listening to me are dumbasses. And there's no way if they're listening to me, they're going to be smart.
Yeah.
And so one of the realizations that was kind of a breakthrough for me was going back to some of my older content and looking at the comments. Like, we put out an NPR episode on YouTube where I hired an NPR producer to come do my show to see what a professional's like. I put out the video, moved on to the next thing, and then maybe a few months ago I went and looked at the comments, and people were like, this is like the gold standard for how to do a podcast. And I finally just started really listening to the people, and also just listening to myself, and I was like, maybe I'm not such a dumbass, and maybe these people are a lot smarter than I'm giving themselves credit for, and maybe what I'm actually saying does help.
And with regards to how do you increase your total addressable market, like, so there's 4 ways to increase it. There's 5 ways to adjust it. So the first 4 are the same, don't worry. The 5th one's just the last one. So you can go upmarket, which means you're selling to bigger versions of the same thing. So let's say I was helping hair salon owners. I could help people who have chains of hair salons, or I could help franchisors or licensors of hair salons. That'd be a much smaller demo, but they'd be much bigger clients. It'd be enterprise, right? I could go down market, which would be selling smaller versions, which would be like I could sell hairstylists, right? If I want to go down market from there, people who aspire to be hairstylists, right? So it's like a pyramid. So you go up market, you can go down market, you can go adjacent market, which is what's similar to hairstylists that probably has similar wants and needs. So it'd probably be like a lash salon or
nail salon or something.
Nail salon, yeah, exactly. So that would be an adjacent market. Or I could go broader. So broader is where you take all adjacent markets under one umbrella, which would be beauty. Right, so it'd be like, I help all beauty type brick and mortar businesses, right? That would be going broader. And so those are the 4 ways you can increase the total addressable market of whatever thing that you're serving. The 5th is you can go narrower. So I say that you can increase it 4 ways. The 5th is you go narrower, you get more specific about the constraints that you apply to the requisites to become a customer. The reason that most times with businesses that I take on in the portfolio, it's actually the first step we do is we actually narrow it most times. And it's because they don't even know who they serve, and they don't know who they serve best. And so when you're starting out, one of the best practices you can do is the fancy word is a common factor analysis. But basically, what do all the best clients we have in common? So if we take 100 clients and we look at the top 20%, because there's Pareto, they're probably responsible for 80% of the revenue anyways. We look at that 20%, we say, what do they all have in common? And then what if we only sold that amount of people, and we sold now the same 100, but they were all of that 20%?
Right.
Well, we would 5x our revenue. Same operational drag because it's the same size company, but we're selling better customers. Yeah. And most people, I get on with entrepreneurs all the time, and they're like, I think I've saturated my market. And I'm like, all right, what's your revenue? They're like, $2 million a year. I'm like, okay, well, the market you're serving is a $60 billion industry, and you are making $2 million a year.
A little room to grow.
Do you feel like you might be premature, or you just don't know how to get more customers? They're like, well, I guess I don't know how to get more customers. Like, that's a problem that's solvable. So let's solve that.
Now that I've started my own company, and I think I've stepped into my own greatness, my own definition of my own greatness, I think I had a lot of insecurities, and I think it was totally right for them to fire me. I think what one of the major things, especially as I've gotten older, is that we all like to work on our weaknesses. We're like, oh, I suck at this, let me focus on that. It's like, why don't you focus on the winners? It's like when one person it's like one negative comment we all focus on instead of like the 99 positive. I think on the flip side of that, for them as a business owner, you have to find people, this is more technical, but you have to find people that scale with the business better. And I wasn't ready to do that. I think I wanted it to be the Noah Kagan show. And at the end of the day, that is the Mark Zuckerberg show. And it was very clear about that. I'd say that the opposite side of that experience, what was the most amazing about all of it, the biggest takeaways for me is not necessarily the firing, because I think it was right and I had to mature and I had to go do my own journey, but it was the learnings I got from being there. Being in a group, like people say this, oh, you're the average of 5 people. I hate that phrase because everyone knows, I hate phrases that everyone knows but no one does shit about. But being at Facebook, I was literally the dumbest person there, almost every day. And the thing is, it doesn't feel good because people are like, be around great people. But if you're around people better than you, it doesn't feel good because you're pretty constantly intimidated that like how much better Mark and Aaron and Sean Parker and Dustin Moskovitz, Chris Hughes, I know Chris wasn't there at the time, but these people are exceptional. And on the contrary of that, I will say is like, you should do whatever it takes to be around those kind of people. whatever it takes. If you could see, and I think what people miss out on a lot of times is they actually see this. And one thing I don't even realize I do this, I still do this to this day. If I ever see amazingness, like more technical business, lately it's been a little bit more in the film production side, I'll do whatever it takes to like try to connect with that person. And just be like, hey, I just want to be around you. I don't know what's going to happen. And so that was a really powerful lesson from being around Facebook. I think Mark's vision, having like a great vision, even not even in business, but in life. Like Mark, from being 20, he was 24 years old, same age as me. I was like, we're going to take over the world. And he was 100% had 100% conviction about that.
Yeah.
Where he was like, we are going to connect every single person in the universe. That's a big ass like vision and belief from someone 24. And I've worked at Microsoft, I met Bill Gates, I've worked at Mint.com, and I've started my own companies over there since then. That is still sticks with me.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that. Tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man,